The early morning sun cast a warm glow over the small southern town as Luke Turner's car rolled down the familiar winding roads. His heart swelled with a mix of nostalgia and apprehension. He hadn't been back in years, not since he left to carve out a life for himself away from the shadows of the past. As he drove past the old diner where he and his friends used to hang out and the church that had been a second home, memories flooded back, both comforting and painful. Pulling up to the Turner family home, he took a deep breath. The two-story house with its wraparound porch looked the same, yet different. It felt more empty, more worn. He stepped out of the car, determined to face whatever lay ahead. Luke found his father, Daniel, sitting on the porch, a blanket draped over his frail shoulders. Daniel's face lit up when he saw his son, his blue eyes twinkling despite the weariness. "Luke, my boy," Daniel said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're home." Luke hurried up the steps and embraced his father gently. "I've missed you, Dad." They sat together, talking about the past and Luke's life away from home. Daniel's joy at seeing his son was palpable, but so was the visible decline in his health. It was clear why Luke had felt the pull to return. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Martha Turner, Luke's stepmother, appeared, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Luke, welcome back," she said, her tone dripping with a mix of forced warmth and underlying tension. "It's been a long time." "Thanks, Martha," Luke replied, trying to keep things civil. "It's good to be back." She eyed him critically. "I hope you're planning to stay for a while this time. Your father needs you." Luke nodded, feeling the sting of her words. "That's the plan." Later in the day, as Luke was unpacking in his old bedroom, he heard the front door slam. He walked downstairs to find Emily, Martha's daughter, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She barely glanced up when he entered the room. "Hey, Luke," she said nonchalantly. "Mom said you were coming back." "Hi, Emily," Luke replied, trying to muster a smile. "How have you been?" "Busy," she said, her tone dismissive. "Got a lot going on." Luke nodded, sensing the disinterest. The spoiled, entitled attitude he remembered hadn't changed. He retreated to his room, the tension in the house already wearing on him. As Luke continued to unpack, he stumbled upon an old desk drawer that hadn't been opened in years. Inside, he found a yellowed envelope with his name on it. The handwriting was unmistakably his mother's. With trembling hands, he opened the letter and began to read. In it, his mother expressed her concerns about Martha's true intentions and her fears for the family's future. She implored Luke to protect the family home and the legacy she and Daniel had built. Luke sat back, the weight of the letter heavy on his heart. His mother's words rekindled his resolve. He needed to find out what Martha was up to and protect what was rightfully his. Needing guidance, Luke walked to the local church. The familiar building stood as a beacon of solace. Inside, he found Pastor John, arranging flowers on the altar. "Luke, it's good to see you," Pastor John said warmly. "Hi, Pastor," Luke replied, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. "I needed to come here. I found a letter from my mom, and it's complicated." Pastor John listened as Luke poured out his worries. "Your faith will guide you, Luke," he said gently. "Trust in it and in yourself." Armed with renewed determination, Luke returned home that evening. He found Martha in the living room, reading a book. "Martha, we need to talk," he said, holding up the letter. "I found this in my room." Martha glanced at the letter, her expression hardening. "What about it?" "It's from my mom. She was worried about you, about your intentions with the house," Luke said, trying to keep his voice steady. Martha's eyes narrowed. "Your mother was paranoid. This house is as much mine as it was hers. I have a right to it." Luke's resolve strengthened. "We'll see about that." Feeling the weight of the confrontation, Luke decided to visit Anna, his childhood friend. Her house was just as welcoming as he remembered, with a tidy garden and a warm atmosphere. "Luke!" Anna exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "It's so good to see you." They spent the evening catching up, reminiscing about old times. Luke felt a sense of relief, confiding in Anna about the situation at home. "You're not alone in this, Luke," Anna said firmly. "We'll figure it out together." Late that night, Luke couldn't sleep. As he wandered the house, he overheard Martha on the phone in the kitchen. "He can't find out," she whispered urgently. "We need to move quickly." Luke's heart raced. Martha was hiding something, and it was up to him to uncover the truth. The mystery deepened, and Luke knew he was just beginning to scratch the surface of the deception surrounding his family's legacy. The next morning, Luke awoke to the sound of coughing from downstairs. Rushing down, he found his father slumped in his chair, looking pale and weak. "Dad, are you okay?" Luke asked, panic rising in his chest. Daniel shook his head weakly. "I don't feel so good, son." Martha appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. "We should take him to the clinic," she said, her tone urgent but lacking sincerity. Luke nodded, helping his father to the car. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. At the local clinic, the doctor examined Daniel, running a series of tests. Luke waited anxiously in the hallway, his mind racing with worry and suspicion. Martha stood nearby, her demeanor calm and composed, which only fueled Luke's unease. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor emerged. "We need to keep him here for further observation," he said. "His condition is serious." Luke nodded, feeling a mix of dread and determination. He needed to find out what was happening to his father. Returning home, Luke found Emily lounging in the living room, her eyes glued to her phone. He decided it was time to confront her. "Emily, do you know anything about Dad's sudden illness?" Luke asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Emily glanced up, annoyance flashing in her eyes. "Why would I know anything about it? He's just old and sick." Luke took a deep breath. "I think there's more to it. I overheard Martha talking on the phone last night, and it sounded suspicious." Emily shrugged. "You're paranoid, Luke. Mom wouldn't hurt anyone." Luke's frustration grew, but he knew pressing Emily further would be futile. He needed another approach. Determined to protect his family's legacy, Luke visited a local lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, to discuss the inheritance and Martha's claims to the house. "Mr. Jenkins, I need to know if there's any way to challenge Martha's claim to the house," Luke said, explaining the situation. Mr. Jenkins listened carefully. "If your mother's letter is genuine and there are grounds to suspect foul play, we can investigate further. But we need concrete evidence." Luke nodded. "I'll find it." A few days later, Luke received a call from the clinic. His heart sank as the doctor's voice confirmed his worst fear. "I'm sorry, Luke. Your father passed away this morning." Luke's world shattered. He rushed to the clinic, feeling an overwhelming mix of grief and anger. Martha was already there, her face a mask of false sorrow. "We need to plan the funeral," she said coldly. Luke clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. He knew now more than ever that he had to uncover the truth. The church was filled with mourners as the community gathered for Daniel's funeral. Pastor John delivered a heartfelt eulogy, but Luke's mind was elsewhere, clouded by grief and suspicion. After the service, Luke spoke with Anna. "Something isn't right, Anna. I think Martha had something to do with Dad's death." Anna nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We need to find proof, Luke. Whatever it takes." That evening, Luke and Anna met at her home to discuss their next steps. As they talked, Anna took a deep breath and revealed her true purpose. "Luke, there's something you need to know. I'm not just here to reconnect. I'm investigating Martha. She's been involved in fraudulent activities before, and I think she's done something terrible here." Luke was stunned. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I needed to be sure, and now I am." "We have to work together to expose her," Anna said firmly. Over the next few days, Luke and Anna worked tirelessly to gather evidence. They combed through old records, interviewed neighbors, and followed leads. They discovered patterns of Martha's manipulations in her previous marriages and financial transactions that raised red flags. Anna compiled the evidence, and Luke felt a glimmer of hope. They were getting closer to the truth. Returning home one evening, Luke found Martha in the living room, her eyes cold and calculating. "You've been snooping around, haven't you?" she accused, her voice icy. Luke stood his ground. "I know what you've done, Martha. I'm going to prove it." Martha's smile was chilling. "You're in over your head, Luke. You can't win." As she walked away, Luke felt a surge of determination. He wasn't going to let her get away with it. With Anna by his side, he knew they had a fighting chance. Luke sat in Mr. Jenkins' office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and files. Anna was beside him, her presence a steadying force. Mr. Jenkins reviewed the documents they had gathered, nodding thoughtfully. "This is a good start, but we need more concrete evidence to challenge Martha's claim," Mr. Jenkins said, adjusting his glasses. "We need something irrefutable." Luke felt a knot of frustration but nodded. "We'll find it. There has to be something we're missing." Back at the Turner family home, Luke confronted Martha in the kitchen. She was making tea, her demeanor calm and controlled. "Martha, I know about your past. I know what you've done," Luke said, his voice steady but filled with anger. Martha turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "And what exactly do you think you know, Luke?" "I know you've manipulated my father, and now you're trying to steal this house," Luke replied, holding up the evidence they had gathered. Martha's eyes narrowed. "You have no proof. This house is legally mine, and there's nothing you can do about it." Luke's anger flared, but he held his ground. "We'll see about that." Luke and Anna decided to visit the local church, seeking both solace and support from the community. Pastor John was there, preparing for the evening service. "Pastor John, we need your help," Luke said, explaining the situation and their suspicions about Martha. Pastor John listened carefully, his brow furrowing with concern. "The community stands with you, Luke. We'll do whatever we can to help." As word spread, the townspeople rallied around Luke, offering their support and sharing any information they had about Martha's past behavior. This newfound support bolstered Luke's determination to uncover the truth. Anna suggested they visit the town archives and records office to dig deeper into Martha's history. They spent hours poring over old documents and records, searching for anything that could be useful. "Look at this," Anna said, pointing to a series of suspicious financial transactions linked to Martha's previous marriages. "She's done this before. We need to find someone who can testify about her past." Luke nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. They were getting closer. Their breakthrough came when they found a copy of Daniel's will in the lawyer's office. It clearly stated that the house was to go to Luke, not Martha. This was the irrefutable evidence they needed. "This changes everything," Mr. Jenkins said, looking over the document. "With this, we have a strong case." Luke felt a wave of relief. "We have to present this in court. We can finally prove the truth." Returning home, Luke found Emily in her room, looking troubled. He decided to confront her one more time, hoping to reach her. "Emily, I know you've been caught in the middle of all this. But you need to know the truth about your mother," Luke said gently. Emily looked up, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what to believe anymore. I thought she loved us, but now she's been manipulating us all. Help us expose her." "It's the right thing to do," Luke urged. Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll testify. I'll tell the court what I know." With Emily's agreement to testify, Luke and Anna finalized their case. They gathered all the evidence, prepared their statements, and worked closely with Mr. Jenkins to ensure everything was in order. "We have a strong case now," Mr. Jenkins said, confidence in his voice. "We're ready." The night before the trial, Luke went to the church alone. He knelt at the altar, praying for strength and guidance. "God, give me the courage to see this through. Help me honor my parents and protect our family's legacy," he whispered. As he prayed, he felt a sense of peace and determination. He knew he wasn't alone in this fight. Back at the house, the tension was palpable. Martha was unusually quiet, her confidence shaken. Emily kept to herself, avoiding her mother's gaze. "We're ready for this," Anna said, placing a reassuring hand on Luke's shoulder. "We'll get through it together." Luke nodded, feeling the weight of the upcoming trial but also the strength of the support around him. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the end for Martha's deceit. The courthouse was bustling with activity as Luke, Anna, and Mr. Jenkins arrived early the next morning. The air was thick with anticipation. Luke took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. Inside the courtroom, the judge called the case to order. "We are here today to determine the rightful ownership of the Turner family home," he announced. "Mr. Luke Turner, you may present your case." Mr. Jenkins stood, presenting the evidence they had gathered. He began with the letter from Luke's mother, detailing her concerns about Martha's intentions. The judge listened intently, nodding as he reviewed the documents. Next, witnesses were called to testify. Pastor John was the first, speaking about the Turner family's history and the loving relationship between Luke's parents. His heartfelt testimony painted a clear picture of the family dynamics. Following Pastor John, several community members testified about Martha's manipulative behavior and suspicious actions over the years. Each testimony added weight to Luke's case, building a strong foundation. Anna took the stand, revealing her findings as an investigative journalist. She presented evidence of Martha's fraudulent activities in previous marriages, showing a pattern of manipulation and deceit. The courtroom murmured in shock as Anna detailed Martha's history. "Martha Turner has a history of exploiting vulnerable men for financial gain," Anna concluded, her voice steady. "She's done it before, and she's doing it now." Martha's lawyer rose to present her defense. He attempted to discredit the witnesses, questioning their motives and reliability. He argued that Martha had every right to the house as Daniel's widow, claiming that the will was invalid due to Daniel's mental state at the time it was written. Martha herself took the stand, portraying herself as a loving wife who had been unfairly maligned. She spoke tearfully about her love for Daniel and her desire to honor his memory, painting a picture of innocence. Mr. Jenkins stood again, this time presenting the most crucial piece of evidence, Daniel's will. This will, found in the archives, clearly states that the Turner family home is to be inherited by Luke Turner, he said, handing the document to the judge. The judge examined the will carefully, his expression stern. "This document appears to be legitimate and valid. It clearly contradicts Mrs. Turner's claims." The courtroom was silent, the tension palpable as the judge reviewed the evidence. Emily was called to the stand, her face pale but resolute. She glanced at her mother, then back at Luke, before beginning her testimony. "I've seen my mother manipulate and deceive people for as long as I can remember," Emily said, her voice shaking. "She's lied about her intentions and used people for her own gain. I can't stay silent anymore." Her testimony was a turning point, providing first-hand evidence of Martha's deceitful nature. The judge listened carefully, nodding as Emily spoke. After a brief recess, the judge returned to deliver his verdict. The courtroom was silent, everyone holding their breath. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that Daniel Turner intended for the family home to be inherited by his son, Luke Turner, the judge declared. Furthermore, the testimonies and evidence provided show a pattern of manipulation and deceit by Mrs. Martha Turner. The court rules in favor of Luke Turner. A collective sigh of relief swept through the courtroom. Luke felt a weight lift from his shoulders, gratitude and relief washing over him. As the court adjourned, Martha was approached by the authorities. "Mrs. Turner, you are under arrest for fraud and other related charges," an officer said, handcuffing her. Martha's facade crumbled, and she glared at Luke. "You'll regret this," she hissed, but Luke stood firm, watching as she was led away. Emily approached Luke, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Luke. I didn't know what to do." Luke hugged her. "It's okay, Emily. You did the right thing." Back at the Turner family home, Luke, Anna, and Emily sat together in the living room, reflecting on the day's events. The house felt different now, lighter and filled with a sense of justice and peace. "We did it," Anna said, smiling at Luke. "You honored your parents' legacy." Luke nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "I couldn't have done it without you all." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the house, Luke knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. With the truth revealed and justice served, they could finally look forward to a future filled with hope and promise. The church bells rang joyfully as the townspeople gathered for a special service. The pews were filled with familiar faces, all there to support Luke and celebrate the justice that had been served. The atmosphere was one of relief and camaraderie. Pastor John stood at the front, beaming. "Today, we gather not only to worship but to celebrate the triumph of truth and justice. Luke Turner, we stand with you, proud of your strength and perseverance." Luke stood up, moved by the support. "Thank you, everyone. This isn't just a victory for me but for our entire community. Together, we've upheld what's right." The congregation erupted in applause. Luke felt a deep sense of belonging and gratitude, knowing that his fight had brought the community closer together. Over the next few weeks, Luke focused on restoring the family home. The house, once a battleground, began to transform into a place of warmth and love once again. Friends and neighbors volunteered to help, painting walls, fixing fences, and planting new flowers in the garden. Anna was there every step of the way, her presence a constant source of encouragement. "This place is looking beautiful again," she said, admiring the freshly painted walls. "It feels right," Luke replied, smiling. "It's what my parents would have wanted." As they worked side by side, their bond grew stronger. The house, now filled with the laughter and chatter of friends, became a symbol of new beginnings. One evening, after a long day of work, Luke and Anna sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was a tapestry of oranges and pinks, a perfect backdrop for their conversation. "Luke, I've been thinking," Anna began, her voice soft. "Maybe it's time for me to stay. I mean, for good. This town, this life, it feels right." Luke's heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Anna nodded, smiling. "Yes, I want to be here, with you." Luke took her hand, feeling a surge of joy. "I'd love that, Anna, more than anything." As the stars began to twinkle above, they knew their future was bright and filled with possibilities. The next Sunday, Luke found himself alone in the church, sitting quietly in one of the pews. He reflected on the journey he had been on, from the moment he returned to his hometown to the present day. Pastor John approached, sitting down beside him. "You've come a long way, Luke. Your parents would be proud." "Thank you, Pastor," Luke said, his voice filled with emotion. "It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it." Pastor John nodded. "Your faith and determination have been an inspiration to us all. Whatever comes next, I know you'll face it with the same strength and grace." Luke smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew that whatever the future held, he was ready. On a quiet afternoon, Luke visited the cemetery, standing before his parents' graves. He placed fresh flowers on each headstone, his heart heavy with love and gratitude. "Mom, Dad, I did it," he whispered. "I protected our home. Your legacy is safe." As he stood there, the wind rustling through the trees, he felt a sense of closure. He knew that his parents' spirits were at peace, and so was he. Back at the house, Luke received a call from a local non-profit organization. They were looking for someone to help lead a new community project aimed at supporting underprivileged families. "We've heard about your dedication and the work you've done," the caller said. "We think you'd be perfect for this role." Luke felt a spark of excitement. "I'd love to be involved. Thank you for considering me." This new opportunity was a chance to give back to the community that had supported him, and he was eager to make a difference. With the house fully restored, Luke invited the community over for a housewarming celebration. The once tense and conflicted home was now filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of friendship. "This house stands as a testament to resilience and the power of community," Luke said in a toast. "Thank you all for being a part of this journey." The guests raised their glasses, celebrating not just the house, but the spirit of unity and hope that had brought them all together. Later that evening, Luke and Anna sat together, discussing their future. "I've been offered a role with a non-profit," Luke said, excitement in his voice. "It's a chance to help others and continue making a difference." Anna smiled. "That's wonderful, Luke. And I've been thinking of starting a local news blog, focusing on positive stories and community achievements." Luke took her hand. "Together, we can make this town even better. I'm so glad you're here with me." The next Sunday, the church was filled with light and joy as the congregation gathered for the morning service. Pastor John's sermon was about hope and faith, reflecting on the journey they had all witnessed. Luke and Anna sat together, their hands intertwined, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and anticipation for the future. As the service ended, the church doors opened wide, letting in the bright morning sunlight. Luke knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter, filled with promise and guided by faith. With Anna by his side and the support of his community, Luke felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led him to a place of peace and hope, where he could honor his parents' legacy and build a future filled with love and purpose.